Spellcasters can seem confusing. Let's say you want to jump over a gap, lift a boulder, or attack a goblin. All of these actions have the same resolution mechanic. You roll a d20, you add your modifiers, and you try to beat a DC. Let's say you wanted to cast a spell. What do? Well, it's not as complicated as it sounds. Spells just happen. If you want to cast the spell Produce Flame, then you produce a flame. If you're a spellcaster, you have to know these 4 things. Let's start with the spell attack modifier and the spell DC. In fact, we could combine them into one concept. Your spell attack modifier plus 10 is equal to your spell DC. These are basically the same number. This number represents how good you are at casting spells. We can further split spells into 3 categories. First, spells that just happen and will buff or heal allies, spells that just happen but you need to roll to attack with it, or spells that just happen but your opponent gets a chance to avoid it. Let's start with the first one. This should be self-explanatory. Because spells just happen and you have 2 willing parties, no resolution mechanic is required, they just happen. Category number 2, let's say you cast Produce Flame and produce a flame. The flame just happens, but you need to roll a d20 plus modifiers in order to attack with that flame. In this case, the modifiers are your spell attack modifier. It's important to note that because this is technically an attack, it still incurs a multiple attack penalty. Number 3, let's say you have a spell that creates a 5x5 column of fire. Again, this column of fire will just happen, but it's only fair that the opponent gets a chance to avoid it with a d20 roll. They need to meet or exceed your spell DC. There's 3 ways an opponent could avoid your spell. They could use their will to resist it with mental strength. They could use fortitude to be protected by their body's natural defenses and immunity, or they could use their reflexes to jump out of the way. All of these require them to make a roll and meet or exceed your spell DC. However, the opponent cannot just pick one of these things. The way they avoid it depends on the spell. Let's say you cast Pummeling Rubble. Well, then your opponent will get a chance to avoid it with a reflex save. Let's say you cast Charm. In this case, your opponent gets a chance to avoid it with a will save. Let's say you cast Goblin Pox. Your opponent will get a chance to avoid it with a fortitude save. You can use this information strategically in battle. Let's say you want to cast Charm, and you're currently fighting an ogre and a drow priestess. You know that to resist the charm, they will have to make a will save. Who should you target with the spell? The drow priestess, capable of incredible feats of mental strength, or this big dumb ogre? Well, let's look at their will saves. The ogre has a +6, but the drow priestess has a +14. It becomes obvious you should try to cast Charm on this ogre. Let's try a different situation. You want to cast Goblin Pox. The opponent will have to make a fortitude save. Well, who should you target in this situation? Both fortitude saves are pretty high, but you'd probably have better luck with the drow priestess. Let's say you want to cast Chilling Spray on an ogre. The ogre makes a reflex save. What happens if they succeed or fail? Well, like any other check, there's 4 stages of success. In general, the different stages of success depend on the spell you're casting, but many of them have the same structure. A spell that has this structure for the stages of success can often be referred to as a basic save. They're pretty intuitive, except for perhaps success, which you have to remember still causes half damage. Now let's talk about the next topic. Are you a prepared or spontaneous caster? If you're a spellcaster, every level you should have a table like this that tells you how many spell slots you get per spell level. I should note, a spell level is completely different from your level. Let's ignore cantrips for now. Let's say you're a prepared caster. In this case, each spell is like a bullet. Once you cast it, it's gone. In that case, you can imagine each spell level like a different gun. The second level spells have a bigger gun because these spells are generally more powerful. You can then look at the pool of bullets you have access to. These are the first level spells, these are the second level spells, and decide every morning which bullets to put in which slots. For example, you could put Charm, Goblin Pox, and Chilling Spray for your first level spells. Then you can decide your second level spells. You could put Invisibility into one. You can actually use Invisibility twice and put the same spell in 2 different slots. What if you don't want Invisibility for a second time? What if you want Chilling Spray? You can put a spell with a lower spell level into a higher level spell slot. In fact, in some cases, this might make the spell more powerful. Normally, Chilling Spray does 2d4 cold damage. However, for every additional spell level slot you prepare it in, it does an extra 2d4 damage. This is called heightening the spell. The same spell can have 2 different effects depending on which of these 2 guns you fire it out of. So now you have your 2 guns, your first level spells and your second level spells. Let's say you want to cast Charm on this ogre. You fire this bullet, now this bullet is gone. Now let's talk about Spontaneous Caster. In this case, your spell slots are like juice in a battery. They can be used for any spell in your repertoire. That's all it takes. You don't have to prepare anything. Now let's say you're in the field and you're fighting an ogre and you want to cast Charm. Well, Charm is a first level spell. It means the juice in your first level spell slot battery will get reduced by 1. Let's say you don't have any more first level spells available for today, but you still want to cast Chilling Spray. You can cast Chilling Spray using a second level spell slot. However, if you're a spontaneous caster, this does not automatically heighten the spell. So how do you heighten spells as a spontaneous spellcaster? You need to make sure you have the heightened spell in your repertoire. Instead of Scorching Ray, you must have Chilling Spray +1, the heightened version. You have the same spell in your repertoire twice. Once is the first level version, once is the second level version. Now, if you cast Chilling Spray and use a second level spell slot, you will cast the heightened version and get an extra 2d4 of damage. Now, we can talk about cantrips. You can cast cantrips as much as you want with no limitation. Additionally, cantrips are automatically heightened to half your level rounded up. For these two reasons, cantrips are your best friend. Rover. There are some things you need to figure out for every spell. The spell level, the range, the target, how it works, and the duration. Each spell can cost a different number of actions. Some spells are even only a reaction. Now let's talk about the last thing, your tradition. For both prepared and spontaneous casters, you need to know how you get access to these spells. How does this happen? It has to do with your tradition. There are 4 traditions. Each tradition has its own spell list. Let's say you chose Arcane. You might have access to a spellbook or patron. Every time you level up or create your character, you'll have to choose what spells from the Arcane spell list go into your spellbook or patron. The spells in your spellbook or patron are these bullets you can choose from when you prepare your spells every day. This is unique to your class. Some classes don't have a spellbook or a patron. Some classes can prepare their spells every morning from the entire spell list. Spontaneous casters have their repertoire, which they can choose their spells from at any moment. Anytime they level up or create their character, they get to add spells to their repertoire from their spell list of their tradition.